Good morning. Today, in the series of talks on the nature of freedom, the title, The Greatest Spiritual Battle of Our Lifetime. A complex topic, a difficult topic, an essential topic, one very precious to me. Essentially, the battle to de-normalize evil and to re-normalize goodness and beauty. Ancient, primordial topic that will never cease to be crucial until we radically eradicate darkness and evil. And I do believe it's possible, both individually and collectively, and reacquaint ourselves individually and collectively and generationally with the true, the good, the beautiful, the nuministic, the holy. Call it what you will. In classical Buddhist psychological terms, kilesa, primarily the states of mind that are found within greed, anger, and delusion, and their opposites, loving kindness, wisdom, compassion. Many of you may have watched the film. It's called The Zone of Interest. And it was written, I think, and directed by a gentleman named Jonathan Glazer, loosely based upon a novel by Martin Amis. A highly celebrated, controversial, crucial film, at least in my take of watching it recently. And it takes the life of the commandant of the concentration camp, Auschwitz. I think his name is Rudolf Höss, and his wife Hedwig. And rather than focus on that which we know from a distance took place within Auschwitz, it focuses on the day-to-day life of the commandant, his wife, and his 5 children in a mansion adjacent to the Auschwitz concentration camp. And it seems that the intent is to demystify the perpetrators of this epic evil, of the systematic murder, desecration of 6 million Jews and 5 million additional, quote, deplorables. An epic horror. And this extremely meticulously filmed, slow, deeply intimate portrait, a cinematic portrait of this man and his wife, Rudolf Höss, the overseer the extermination of our brothers and sisters, human life. Having tea, bathing, having wine, guests. All the while you hear at times the screaming of the mass horror and anguish of human life being experimented upon and tortured. At times there's the sense that one is smelling from the extermination chimneys and the gas chambers, the smell of human flesh. There's even a time when he's swimming in the river with his children and there are body parts and remains. Deep normalization of evil from a very oblique point of view, where this man, handsome with his attractive wife and his beautifully dressed children in their mansion and playing and reading Hansel and Gretel to them, and all the things that go on in the juxtaposition of the concentration camp of Gaza, of Myanmar, of Ukraine, of Russia, places in Africa, the downtown city streets of almost every city in the world, the types of juxtapositions that we all live with, not as commandants, nor only as victims, but in how we acquaint and begin to normalize this unique zone of interest in our own lives. And to me, a radical, provocative, compelling, archetypal spiritual battle to challenge these deep tendencies that we have to compartmentalize, to retranslate the emotionality of what we are participating in, the desecration of the oceans, the fish, the trees, our tax dollars and how they go about in their own way to normalize in a financial collusion-like manner, the drones, the missiles, the technology used to disseminate human life. I was also watching a second film, actually, just the other evening. Maybe you've seen it, called The Children of the Cult, a profoundly morally courageous film that's just been recently aired, that deals systematically with the shocking testimonies of child victims and documenting the sexual abuse within the Osho Rajneesh ashrams in the 1970s and 1980s. Far beyond Wild Wild Country, that was a Netflix serial some 6 or 7 years ago. And it was like, oh my God. And I kept watching this and listening to these women now in their 40s, not just a few, but many, speak on camera of the normalization of sexual violence and rape on young women in all the various ashrams, whether it be in Pune in India, or whether it was in the ranch in Oregon, or in some of the other ashrams in the EU, beyond that, I don't know, but it seems to be systemic, pervasive, highly normalized, far beyond the tantrification and the open sexuality, but rampant serial predator, pedophilia, and rape from this film. And I encourage everyone involved in a meditative, dharmic, Eastern-oriented, certainly anyone within the world of the Osho brand lineage, mandatory observation and accountability and illumination of what you feel, what should be done is inevitable. A global class action suit that's just on the horizon. And equally within this film, you have your Rudolf Höss and his wife Hedwig. And on camera, you see some of the men that have been illuminated in these women whom have been radically sexually abused, violated and raped, not only normalizing their behavior, radically denying it. And you just go beyond your initial shock/reaction triggered trauma, and you go, wow. You go to yourself, what's new? What's new? Hold yourself, Alan. Hold yourself not in reaction, but in the greatest spiritual battle of our lifetime. I had so many conversations with my late Dharma teachers in Myanmar. And there would always be this sense of my kind of young, brash, maverick-based, melodramatic, theatrical artist, crazy monk, trying to understand and tame my own compulsions and addictions. They had patience on me, but they did appreciate the dialogue, and they would engage this dialogue, and they would de-normalize it. They would say, yes, it is an inherent set of intersecting cognitive dimensions within existence. Greed is primordial, fear is primordial, anger is primordial. And as long as there's physicality and embodiment, there will be convulsions of these states that force the individual, animal, trees, devas, Brahmins, humans, lower ghosts, to convulse based on these states of consciousness and violate their external circumstances. And when there's enough agreement of that violation, we have the normalization of genocide. For some, the conquerors, the freedom fighters, and these teachers of mine, the late Mahasi Sayadaw, the late Venerable Siddha U Pandita, there would be this sense of poignant, respectful, what's new? This is a timeless circumstance. It's known as the greatest Dharma battle of a human lifetime, is to more and more intimately, and I move here into the denormalization, to take more and more responsibility for your own interior states of mind. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu to these great Kalyanamitas. The turning away from reactive normalization, participation, revulsion, which is normal, into what can you do to increase the frequency, the intimacy of your spiritual battle. Call it what you will, a love affair, a tantra dance, a feminine-inspired saturation of the edge of attachment and fear and greed, whatever you need to do to guard your mind, to protect your mind from the onslaught of these upsurges known as the upsurge of dosa, anger, the upsurge of moha, ignorance, the upsurge of lobha, greed, where one loses their focus and you become Rudolf Höss or his wife, Hedwig. And then all of a sudden, I think I'm going to meet with these two scientists, and you see this in the film, where they present to him a new form of exterminant. What's it called? Zyklon B, a pesticide that then becomes introduced into the extermination chambers, and it kills more effectively, quicker and more of the deplorables and Jews than prior to Zyklon B's use. And you see Commandant Höss and his wife Hedwig and his children and their various attendees continuing to live in decorking their fine wine, making love, reading books to the children, gardening, ironing, sweeping. Meanwhile, adjacent, you see the chimneys burning human life, flesh, relationships, jobs, families, and that smoke screams of trauma, the greatest spiritual battle of our lifetime. And so I'm looking at these different films, The Zone of Interest, The Children of the Cult, the normalization of predation and rape, the normalization of extermination, the normalization of experimentation on the fetuses of women without anesthesia, the normalization of the bombing of my grandparents' home city of Beirut, the normalization of Gaza, the normalization, the decapitation of life after life after life, the normalization of the neuroses and the pathology of collusion with violence and war and murder and rape and genocide and Holocaust. Have we not had enough normalization of lies, of slander, enough to turn away from all of these forces within the human mind? 1 million boys and men and women dead in Ukraine, and we're still just give them more munitions. Kill, kill, kill. 600,000 boys and women and men in Russia. Kill, 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 kill. The normalization, the fetish, the racketeering, the fentanyl of murder, the crack cocaine of genocide, this incredible energetic within the human psyche that just builds in the momentum. We can't kill them fast enough. It's purely devilish in the greatest spiritual battle of our lifetime. There are those among us, maybe you, maybe me at times, where we go, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. I'm trying to think here in the last half of this presentation, like really what is a sound way to engage this dilemma of good and bad, right and wrong, beneficial and denigration, good and evil. I know that my approach was meditation. And I know that's a very challenging word for a lot of people, meditation. Fundamentally points to, for those of you who have been blessed to cultivate bhavana in the context of Burma or Myanmar, among those few really great teachers, it's the facing of one's own self, the facing of one's own consciousness, raw, unfiltered, and naked. And you just simply abide in honest, radical focus on the truth of what's arising without normalizing it, without running, without distraction, without you. How many of us have been nuns and monks or lay people in monasteries and meditation centers, and how you begin to see that this convulsion of consciousness can't be turned off, as you can turn on and off a Netflix or your computer or your iPhone. Consciousness will not just turn off. Even when one sleeps, obviously, it goes into a different dimension. And some dream things called nightmares, and some people wake up from nightmares to live a more nightmare. And so the turning away from normalization of kilesa and the reacquainting ourselves with the intimacy of kusala, goodness, generosity. Those of us who've been the recipient of someone's dana, unable to care for ourselves, someone wipes your forehead, puts water on your lips, gives you an IV that you couldn't do or survive without it. You go, oh, what angel you are to have that quality of dana paramita in you, generosity. And you had the conscience and the mindful intelligence to inhabit that energy of dana, and you fulfilled the vision of giving. And you were the recipient. You cry when someone lives in the normalization of beauty and goodness and freedom, and overcomes their tendency to withhold, to deny, to subjugate, to disappear, to not be there when one needs support. So, coming to the close of this particular sharing, meditation, a chance to occupy oneself. That's the whole instruction that we'll do in Bali at the retreat in March, is to occupy our body as basis of being and engage a more mindfully intelligent, feeling-based awareness of that which arises on a sensation somatic level of our own body. Feel the body. I can guarantee you that if some of these people, the commandant Höss, President Biden, President Trump, Mr. Netanyahu, Zelensky, Putin, Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, Ming Online, if they just took a day, a weekend, a week, with the aid of a support where they just couldn't escape and were feel. No, don't write, don't talk, don't listen to music, don't dance, don't masturbate, don't run, don't drive, don't change, just feel your own body. The discomfort would begin to arise. The decisions you might even begin to convulse because you are now not able to run. You can no longer normalize your behavior. You can't hide in the illusion of action. And that's one of the greatest things in a meditative retreat is, I know when I first entered the monastery in Rangoon, I was young, I was wild, I was coming off a variety of addictions, and how easy it was to blame my circumstances outside of me for why I couldn't be the person I wanted to be inside. Why were the dogs in the monastery? They're just so loud, and that loud barking kept me from focusing on my own mind. Fill in the blanks with the ways in which you blame and shame the world for the reasons you can't occupy the way of consciousness that you wish to occupy. And why don't you have screens on the meditation hall windows to protect us from these large mosquitoes? And why is the food so oily? Why? I just began to see what a blamer you are, Alan Clements. What a blamer you are, with your unbridled, condescending, righteous indignation of these beautiful people gifting you in their own humble way the gift of a space, a sacred space to feel and to look without running, the denormalization of your habits, your addictions, your fetish for blame, anger, and blaming and anger towards yourself. Just to stop. I think meditation is perhaps the best kept secret on the planet. And take away the need to be happy or still or at peace. Just take that off the table. Just simply 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 days to occupy present time presence and FEEL. Feel with self-awareness that which arises and take responsibility for it as being within you, not being sourced outside. The dogs barking aren't the reason why you are unhappy, Alan. The food is not why you are unhappy. And that was a really amazing turning point for me. It's not just meditation, but reclaiming these primordial habits of projecting on the outer world. The denormalization through the machinations of seeing how source and psyche and consciousness interrelate to project happiness and pain outside. And just, wow. I know coming back to my room once in the monastery, I was so vulnerable, so alone in this foreign country, and so unable to control my mind. And I was trying the best that I could do it, sitting 8 hours a day, walking in meditation, 6 1-hour periods, and eating only 2 meals a day, and sleeping only the mandatory 4 hours. It was rigorous, but it was a very important process for me. If only Rudolf Höss and his wife could have done a Vipassana retreat right there in their home next to Auschwitz, I wonder if it would have been a different scenario. I wonder if he would have seen, oh my God, an awakening of conscience. Redemption is the core ingredient here of denormalization. You begin to see, wow, I can work with these primordial forces. So I was sitting on my bed late at night, and outside my window, I could hear dogs growling. And when it's silent and humid and dark and you're vulnerable, the growling was like, and you can hear this in the zone of interest. You can feel it in the women who are in the children of the cult, sharing their testimonies as child victims of rape. You can, they're vulnerable, and some of them get up and they're angry and they're traumatized. And I'm realizing there, as I'm sitting on my bed listening to these dogs growl, my entire history was coming into pixelated focus. And I was thinking like, oh my God, here I am isolating on these dogs as a problem when in fact they're symbolic of just the ways in which I have not been able to understand the agency, the functionality of my own interior mind, consciousness. I never put it under intimate study, even under the psychedelic lens. Sure, there were degrees of it, but not naked, uncensored, raw, and intimate. I got up after about 30 minutes and I just could not bear anymore the sound of this growling. I went out there with my flashlight and looked, and there was this extremely emaciated, vulnerable dog with 4 or 5 or 6 of her puppies all vying for a nipple and milk and nurturing of life and survival. And she looked at me, and you can see that she was scared of this intruder, and the puppies were, their eyes were still closed. And they were growling and jostling for the nipple, and I go, oh my God, life on life. And I'm beginning to think, oh my God, isn't that you? A blind puppy at 29 years old, hoping to find that primordial safety, nurturance in the nipple of existence. I can't do it on my own. And here, in my quest for more independence and awakening, I was decathexing from the external. And I went, oh my God. And that was a very big turning point for me to realize my inner world was what determined my peace and happiness. And that's where the greatest spiritual battle of a lifetime is fought, inside one's own mind. It's not the only place. You do what you can through compassion, generosity, to see that we're interrelated with life everywhere. But you want to do everything you possibly can to realize that consciousness is a diamond, and you want to learn the fine art of Dhamma practice, dana sila bhavana, satipatthana, to polish the facets of your own Dhamma of mind. Become a radiant jewel of the Dhamma, polishing kusala states of mind, steadfastness, determination, kindness, generosity, patience, compassion, loving kindness, creativity, joy, rapture, insight, panya, wisdom, freedom, nibbana. The greatest spiritual battle of a lifetime. De-normalizing kilesa and evil, normalizing and enhancing radiant states of mind. I went to Mahasi Sayadaw after this, this circumstance with the puppies. And I told him about my encounter. And he said, very good. That's a very, very crucial insight to begin to mature and take greater responsibility for that which is within your own mind. There you can choose freedom. You can choose not to inhabit conflict. You become a responsible individual in society. And he told me of a story way back in the day when he was young that he had heard of an affluent woman in Mandalay who had never been to the coast of Myanmar or Burma, the Andaman Sea, which is a spectacular bay and sea of all types of Caribbean-like colors, 50 different shades of turquoise and 30 shades of translucent blue. And apparently there was a bit of a type of crime network on the coast, as I remember the story being told. And these people understood that this woman had never seen the ocean before. And so they sold her different colors of the Andaman Sea: turquoise, blue, clear, and put it in brown bottles. It made quite a bit of money, and she took it back to Mandalay and was going to open up a subsidiary type business of selling colored water to the people of Mandalay. And obviously, as the story goes, whether it's ultimately true or simply symbolic, when she opened up the brown bottles and poured the water out, there was no color. And Mahasi Sayadaw was telling me this, is how easily we begin to identify with the color of consciousness. We project that color to be intrinsic outside, and we miss the transparent luminosity of the color being inside, and that color occupies the purity of consciousness. We come home, and we begin to see even that translucent state of oceanic consciousness. It too is anicca, the molecules of change. It too is empty of self. It too, if one identifies with even the most refined states of freedom, Mahasi said, you too will find that in time anicca and anatta create dukkha. Occupy non-centrality, the ultimate state of freedom. And so as I end today, may I invite you to consider the ways in which we can denormalize allow ourselves to become more convulsive, like looking at that emaciated female dog with the blind puppies. Become more available to the tragic, fractured vulnerability of being radically upset with those in those styles of the zone of interest, the children of the cult. Denormalize rape, denormalize predation, denormalize sexual abuse, denormalize munitions, denormalize murder, denormalize missiles, denormalize drones, denormalize dictatorship, denormalize autocratic behavior, denormalize fascism, denormalize totalitarianism, denormalize complicity with all those different dimensions, normalize creative, dharmic-oriented actions that support the elevation of other people, and equally assume a more radical willingness to enter the greatest battle of a human lifetime, to polish the diamond of consciousness, the facets of it, and to do all that we can to remove from society and culture and history and the God Dharma genome of totality any proclivity to violate. That to me is the greatest Dharma battle that one could engage. That's the battle of a bodhisattva, the battle of a Buddha, the battle of a one who's empowering their instinct to become an arhat, free and liberated. So if you have interest to pursue any of these ideas, tune in tomorrow. We have the retreat, as I mentioned, in Bali, March 15th to the 21st, 2025, offered on Dhamma, trusting in the good forces that people will support it. The online application is on my website, worlddharma.com, under the schedule and the events. And so from my heart to yours, watch the film, The Zone of Interest. Watch this film, The Children of the Cult, the Osho ashrams. And do what you can to spread the good word. Bond together and fight the good fight of the Dharma. So from my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being in my life in the way that you are. And God willing, hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.